The real unsung heroes of any organization is truly the middle managers because they serve the organization by developing people, leading teams, manage processes, and engaging customers and stakeholders to maximize net profit. To me, they are the real corporate heroes. And I am here to help them by sharing their knowledge, concepts, tools, and techniques through my podcast so that they can serve the organization better. Welcome to the Manager's Mindset podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Manager's Mindset podcast. Today, we have a guest who is passionate about transforming people into their best versions. This passion has made him spend 12 years, which is close about a decade, in the field of talent and leadership development. He is a brain-based coach and a practitioner of Hogan and DISC assessment. And he's going to be helping us in cracking how to transform yourself and your team members. So let's welcome the guest for the day, Mr. Abhijith.
Hey, thank you, Gopi. Thank you for having me here.
Hey Abhijith, how do you feel being part of this podcast?
This is amazing, I must say. And in my opinion, this topic of transformation has a certain amount of sanctity to it, right? So allow me maybe a couple of minutes to talk about what qualifies me to even address audience of your podcast on this topic. So I was a hostelier, during my college days. Were you a hostelier?
Yeah.
So then you will be able to relate to this.
Yeah.
So this one night when we were a little high on spirits and we were outside the hostel. But then what really happened is something very unfortunate, and I met with an accident. And considering my physique, I'm a lanky guy. I got thrown off the bike, and I kind of really flew on the other side of the divider. And I have huge eyesight, so I can't see things far. And of course when I flew, my specs flew off my face. And I kind of lay there for maybe some seconds, and I could realize a truck kind of coming towards me. I couldn't move, and for a moment I thought that the horoscope said it wrong. I'm not going to live until 75, 76. I'm done for good today. But then somehow the truck just meandered past me. And in that very moment, whatever influence the substance was, it just went away. But then I was really high on thoughts, and I sat there kind of thinking, and there were still vehicles coming my way. The headlights of those seemed like the background of a picture with bokeh effect. And I was kind of still looking at those, but I was thinking, why am I here? What is my purpose? And I was stuck in an education that I was really apathetic to, and that kind of strained the relationship that I had with my parents. And in that flash of the moment, and I could hear faint voices of my friends telling me, "Get up from there! That it's not safe. It's not safe, to be sitting there." But in that flash of moment, I knew that I wanted to help people gain knowledge, to gain skills, to do kind of better in life. So I think, in a way I was transformed at that very moment. And then since then, my life has been, of course, it took me a couple of years, to kind of get into this, but it has been, to help people develop skills, like you said, leadership development and, coaching as of today. So it's been a great journey, and, considering, I have this purpose, I'm so very privileged, to be here with you. To kind of share some nuggets with managers as to how they can transform themselves, how they can transform their teams. So here I am, and I'm kind of willing to answer whatever you have to ask.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So now, Abhijit, since we are talking about transforming people, right?
Uh-huh.
So one thing, when I really understand what is transformation as a team, when I really go back and Google and say, transformation, the first thing comes up your mind is the fitness freaks, right? You see people with a lot of a belly, and then they transform into a six packs guy, and all these muscles coming up. It's not only in Google. When you look at all social media, when you put
Yeah.
transformation, right? The outer part is what people are talking
Mm,
about.
mm,
So there is a lot more to it, is what I believe.
mm, mm,
So I hope you should be able to give us a clarity in what is transformation as a term refers to, first of all.
mm. So I think, look, because of the lockdown and people at home, I think that is the most popular form of transformation that people
Right.
need right now. But yeah, I mean, what you mentioned is very, very, and I would say relevant. That we more often than not focus on external transformation,
Hmm.
and that's why the makeup industry or the apparel industry are such huge industries, right? Because people focus on that. Uh, but then if you kind of look at transformation, which is deep down, which is deep within someone's self, and that sort of personal transformation is the most beautiful thing I've ever come across.
Hmm.
Right. So let me kind of explain that a little bit. And we have all heard about Maslow's need hierarchy and the theory related to that, right?
Yeah.
So there's this guy, his name is Richard Barrett. He's a very, very famous author, and he's written 13 books. And
Hmm.
he did some work to further this work of Robert Maslow. So let me kind of talk about that. So I'll dwell on that maybe for a couple of minutes. So this hierarchy, he modified it in a certain way. So let's start at the bottom.
Hmm.
So the bottom is still survival. It is satisfying our physical needs, or our survival needs. Now we must understand that every time one of our needs uh, does not get met, there is a
Hmm.
fear that we develop about it. So if our survival needs don't get met, then we have the fear, or we
Right.
develop a fear that we do not have enough, and we
Um,
carry that with us for the rest of our lives. So similarly, the next on the pyramid, which is on top of survival needs, is relationship needs. It is to the need for us to feel loved, for us to belong, for us to feel
hmm.
protected. Now, if we do not have that met, then we develop a fear that we are not loved enough.
Right.
On top of that, sits self-esteem, which is the feeling of a sense of self-worth. Um, Now, more often than not, unless there is an abuse, we see that the survival needs and relationship needs
Hmm.
are getting met. Of course, there are certain conditions, economic conditions, where survival needs are not getting met. I'm not kind of talking about those, but otherwise, we see typically that these are in certain ways getting met. The self-esteem need is the need where people start creating that sense of self, the sense of identity. Now 90% of the people in the world are not able to develop that fully.
Hmm.
Now what happens is they don't get rewards, or they don't get recognition, they don't get appreciation, so on and so forth, and
Right.
especially during the teenage years.
Hmm.
And then this fear develops that I am not enough,
Hmm.
and then they carry it throughout their lives. There are very, very I would say high ranking leaders. If you look at them, I mean, they've reached great positions in life, but they're still kind of carrying it with them. So if we look at these three needs, which is survival needs, relationship needs,
Hmm.
and self esteem needs, you'll realize that these are all about the individual, which means these needs are all in self interest. Now, if these needs are met, it isn't that it generates a sense of lasting satisfaction. But if these needs are not met, then it generates anxiety. So it's very important that these needs are met. Now, if these needs are met in a certain way, or once we pass these phases, then we can think about letting go of some of these conditioning. These are social conditioning, or cultural conditioning, or
Mm.
parental conditioning, things that we have grown up with, because these are actually the things that you should do, that you must do, that you have to do. Now once you reach that phase of transformation, and this is where transformation occurs, you can let go of these, and you can develop your values, the ones that resonate with you
Mm.
the most. And that's what transformation is. This is like, in a way, if I have to put it in a phrase, it's like surrendering your ego to your soul. It's like, what does my soul want me to do?
Right.
And maybe I see that smile on your face, because probably this event is
That's
one thing.
beautiful, no?
Yeah, I mean,
Really
it is,
beautiful.
it is, because I think this at this point, that's what you're doing, and you kind of realize that, yeah, this is what my soul wants me to do, so I'm doing this. So that's what transformation is, where like I said, letting go of your fears, you have
Mm.
the courage, to develop and grow,
Right.
um, in accordance with the values that resonate with you deeply. That's what transformation is. Now, once that happens, then there are three other phases on top of transformation. So the first phase on top of transformation is internal cohesion. That means, and I just said that in that example that I shared, that who am I? Why am I here?
Right.
What is my purpose? What purpose do I want to serve in this world? So that is internal cohesion. That's finding meaning
Right.
in my existence in this world. And then on top of that sits making a difference, where we want to make a positive difference to the world, so that we are able to make this world a better place. And on top of that sits selfless service, that my life is dedicated to
Right.
make contributions that will take mankind ahead, and so on and so forth. So now if you look at these three phases, which are above transformation, these are for the for the common good. This is
Mm.
not anything to do with self interest. So you look, that's the hinge. So the below the hinge is self interest, and above the hinge is serving for the common good. So
True.
that's what transformation is. I would kind of define it as that.
Now, since it's a very elaborative and in depth
True.
references, touch points. It
Yeah.
is, you have given a very in depth definitions as such,
Yeah.
Abhijit. Now, since we spoke about this elaborative definition, now
Mm.
what I'm more interested now is that, yes, what my soul wants, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, my soul's need is to be do something, whatever. But when
Mm.
I do something, the results has to come out. And now
Mm.
the question is that, does these results need to be visible?
Mm. Mm.
If it is
And I
not
think,
visible, am I not transforming? That's the question.
yeah, and I think that's a good question, because so in the work that you do in the corporate, right? That of a black belt, or that process improvements. I think you guys say this, right? You
Mm.
cannot improve what you can't measure, and that's where this gets stuck. And this is something that Peter Drucker said very, very long back. And then folks like Robert and these whiz kids, as they were called, they made it very, very popular, not just in the corporate, but also in a way they ran the country. So during the Vietnam War, Robert McNamara came up with this amazing statistic that could be tracked. It's like body count, and it was so visible a result. But I think, look, when we are talking about people and not machines, or an assembly line, probably these sort of statistics
Mm.
work really great for assembly lines. But when we are talking about people, this is really interesting, because people transform. I mean, you are not the same person that you were yesterday. You are different, because you now have experienced certain thing yesterday. But the transformation is probably gradual. Of course, there are certain life changing events, the way kind of I spoke about it, where people's lives get transformed, and you recognize that, oh, I am not the same person I was yesterday, or just some moments before. But then otherwise, the transformation is so very gradual that we don't see a noticeable change in ourselves. So you're right. I mean, to see the results in a way, we need to develop consciousness. And that, consciousness, comes from observing, and observing ourselves in third person. Now, if I continue to refer to myself in the first person, sometimes it's very difficult that I did this, I did that. It feels like the entire being of me, did something. And we say this in a very, very, I would say, in a day-to-day speech. I am angry. That does not mean that my whole self is angry. But if we can change that narrative to say that I notice that Abhijit is being angry, it's a very different and a very powerful way of looking at yourself objectively in the third person. So we need to observe ourselves. And when I say we need to observe, what do we need to observe? We need to observe our failures. We need to observe our accomplishments. We need to observe the actions that we take,
Right.
and how we spend time with those actions. Are there any repetitive patterns with those actions? How do those actions become our habits?
Right.
What are our thoughts? What are our moods and then emotions and then feelings? And how does it, serve our self-esteem? So I think those things, become really, really, very, very important. But okay, let me also, kind of give you a very, quick example over here so that we are able to recognize that what is driving us. So, this, right? I mean, I was into curating, learning programs or leadership development programs. So once, I was, kind of doing this, and of course, we always, do that in teams. I mean, it's not, possible that, we do it single-handedly. So we did a program on a concept that was introduced for the very first time in the corporate, in that organization. And I was so very excited about it. So we worked through it, we launched the program, and then, we were doing sort of retrospective. Today, this was such amazing, and so on and so forth, right? So I was really very excited about it because I kind of believe that this concept could take the organization from point A to point B.
Right.
I was, kind of seeing that, people adopting it, using it, and they kind of benefiting from it, and meetings happening in a very different way, presentations happening in a very different way, so on and so forth. So I kind of felt that, I have made a difference in the organization by, playing maybe a very small role in, curating this program. And then, I was kind of talking to another person who was involved in that curation, and she said that I didn't, think about those things. I thought that because, this is such novel and this is a high visibility project, if I'm a part of it, it will establish me as a great professional. I'm going to, essentially reap some benefits out of it, if I could, put it in that way. So you see, we both did the same thing in the sense, we both participated in the same project. But what was driving us was so very different. I think, if I could very humbly say that, I was thinking about, how it could be for the common good, that, it creates a difference in the organization. But I think, she was thinking about it, from a self-interest, perspective, right. From an achievement perspective, from probably an ambition perspective. So I think we might, this is what, I'd like to point out here, that we might engage in the same activities, but what is driving us, if you're able to observe that, then, that's very, very powerful. So I think, the more we start observing that, the more we see, how it is changing, we'll be able to see, if there is transformation really happening.
That's pretty much summed up, right? So observing, right? And to be more honest, that's the biggest or toughest skill to acquire. That's my take. A lot of people say, no, listening is the toughest skill, is what you talk about. Yeah, both has its pros and cons and different things. But when it comes to transformation and the result or the change or the visibility, what we are talking about. So the observing is what, as you mentioned, is what the key, I believe, right? So how you transform and how you really observe that change is happening or not can be judged based on your observation.
Yeah. And let me just, add a quick point here, because, right. You started this, podcast on that note where you said that, you Google, you see, the transformation as it relates to fitness and health. That's what we do, right? I mean, every day, we're exercising, and probably every 2 days we're going and standing on that weighing scale and, trying to see, well, how many kilos have I lost, or how many, pounds have I shed? Is this
Right.
really working? We're going and standing in front of the mirror, flexing our biceps and seeing, has this even grown? Okay, how much more weight do I need to, lift?
Right.
I think that observation is a key process. Now, because, this is such intangible, this is such abstract, you're right, it's difficult to observe it.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to observe yourself, and that's where, we as coaches, kind of can play a role in being able to hold the mirror, in,
Yes. Very
working as a thought partner, and, kind of keeping people honest about the journey they're on. So I think, yeah, if you can do it all by yourself.
Since this podcast is for the middle line managers, right?
Yeah.
They're going to be having a team to manage.
Yeah.
So now let's assume that they have the managers have transformed themselves. Now they have a big. I would not call it as a big. They are accountable for transforming, right? Their team members as well, right? Now, how can they do that?
So I think definitely by transforming themselves, right? And I'll give you some examples. I'm sure you might have seen this yourself as well in the corporate, right? So you see, people who do not have their survival needs met, they're operating with that fear that I do not have enough. So they are, and I call them in a certain way, crisis managers. They always think, they're in a crisis because they feel, or they're afraid that I don't have enough. So they, kind of operate in a way where, their teams are always firefighting.
Right.
Every next thing is the urgent thing. They're going to cook up a crisis, if there is no crisis. They're running in a helter-skelter, from pillar to post, to get certain things done. And you'll see the team in a frenzy. That's, actually, ideally, happening.
Panic mode is what we call it as.
Panic mode, yeah. That's happening, if someone is, leading that. And again, see, just, to clear. So the manager is a designation. Actually, the role is that of, leading, Of course, you can lead yourselves. That's a different thing. But to answer this question, I'm, considering that, you're leading others. So if your need as a person has not been met, your survival needs have not been met, you're going to be a crisis manager because you are operating that there isn't enough. There are, I don't have enough. The next, relationship. If your relationship needs aren't met, so you're living with the fear or you're operating with the fear that I'm not loved enough. So then you are going to form relationships in a way that I need you to meet my needs. These are the managers who actually call their teams resources. For them, they're just a resource on a paper, or, the resource or he or she is there to fulfill my needs.
My needs.
What I want them to fulfill. So that's, so they're not, really collaborating. That's because, like I said, they're thinking, I need you to meet my needs. If, they do not have their self-esteem needs met, which means, they are operating from the fear that I am not enough.
Right.
I still have, a point to prove. We have those micromanagers there. They want to, kind of take the credit. They're, kind of going and diving, in everyone's work. They're not, able to delegate with confidence because they're thinking, oh, this work will not be produced with that sort of, perfection that I would have produced it. So they're, kind of, behind people's lives and, kind of pushing them, in not the most healthy way, if I could say. So that's where, they're the controlling managers or the micromanagers. But then the transformation happens, right? That those needs are met, you're letting go of those fears, you are creating alternate narratives, to kind of let go of those beliefs, you're changing those beliefs. And then comes, internal cohesion. It's like, why am I here? What's my purpose? So that's where, you are the inspiring leader. Because you are able to give the team a purpose, and not, I would say, give the team a purpose, but help them discover their purpose and in certain ways tie it to the organizational purpose, right? The next, which is like wanting to make a difference in the world. If you're operating from that, zone, then, you're collaborating. You are seeing, how might I collaborate with the purpose that I have, and the team has, and the organization has. How can I tie it in a single string and bring certain things that will make this ecosystem better. So that's where you start taking the role of like a mentor or a coach, and typically we call that a servant leader.
So servant leadership, yeah.
Where you're putting others' needs ahead of yours, and that's what pretty much leadership is all about, right? If you're able to put others' needs ahead of your needs, you're a good leader in certain ways. And then the last one is service, where you're being very very selfless. You're thinking about the greater good. What will take people from A to B, and so on and so forth. What's that promised land. So then you're a visionary leader. Now again, it's very easy to kind of say all of these things, but so difficult to do. But the more we're focusing on this as managers, the better it is for our teams. Because let's understand, and I'm sure this is true for all of us. Most of us learn leadership the way we experience it, right? So if tomorrow you're promoted to a manager in your organization, you will try and do what that manager did, or whosoever was your manager, because that's the kind of leadership you've been exposed to. So you will think, okay, this is the way to lead. So I think that's how we can transform the team. Now this is very very important, that when we reach that transformation, and we go above that, when we are trying for internal cohesion, if we are able to see through what our purpose is, we will be able to help others see through what their purpose is. The more we are able to do that, the better the team members will transform themselves. And then it's a cycle. Just go on. It'll happen with one, two, and then many. So I think that's what I'd want to say for managers, that this is probably the best way to kind of transform. First, focus on definitely yourself, and then the more you focus on yourself, you will be able to focus on others.
Right. All right. So now pretty much we got the entire the cycle or a circle filled up, right? So what is transformation, the why part, how part, and also how can we extend it, right? So now having talked about this, Abhijit, last question is one piece of advice, right? If you want to give it to the midline managers, right? What is it? One piece of advice.
Yeah. And again, I'll go back, to what I was saying, that, so look, once you've transformed, and I'm considering that, this will inspire all of you to transform yourselves, whosoever is kind of listening to this or watching this. So it doesn't mean that, once we have transformed, we'll never, fall below the line, as we might call it. Again, I lost a very close relationship just some time back. It was one of the relationships that kind of, discovered in years, or maybe, a decade. It was so very close. And I kind of, fell back, below that, below the line. It will continue to happen, but the more we stay conscious about it, the more we are willing to examine our beliefs, our narratives, and think about what's the opportunity. It's going to be really really great. So to answer your question again, that what is that one piece of advice, and I think it's a very novel situation right now, this new normal that we are talking about. So this is, brought complexities for everyone, not just, some, folks or, a group of people. So you see, to navigate through these complexities, it is imperative for every manager to take on the role of a coach. Now, why is that important? Because there is so much uncertainty. So, you can provide clarity, or at least. And when I say provide clarity, I do not mean that the manager has clarity. Even even managers today do not have clarity. So to seek clarity together, and to find that clarity around goals, performance, career development, These are all, topics, and I think, we're doing this at a very, timely way, because this is the season of, all these conversations in organizations, right? And also, I think, to challenge employees, to new horizons, which is very, very important, right? And then finally, like I said, align that individual purpose to the purpose of the team, and then finally, to the purpose of the organization.
Right.
That's what, managers need to do. And to do that, they need to become, in a certain way, coaches. So I think the more, they develop that capability, the better it is going to be for them and their teams.
Got it. Now, Abhijit, thank you very much for the time. It's like, that's how every piece of information is in depth, and I thoroughly enjoyed, and a lot of insights you have given, and I'm so grateful to you for sharing your knowledge, wisdom to my community. So thank you very much, and I hope we should be able to make another one more podcast in some time.
Absolutely. I think, it was a privilege to be here. Like I said, I want to dedicate, this to all managers to gain, more knowledge, more information. And if I'm able to even, like, touch one manager, through this audience,
Yeah.
I would say that, this has been a good, time well spent. This has been a good utilization of our time. So thank you for having me here, Gopi. This was in a nice chatting, and I'm more than, happy to see, what our managers have to say from the takeaways, that they might have, from this webcast podcast. So thank you for having me here. Namaste.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, stay tuned. So next podcast is going to be coming on next Thursday. Stay blessed.